Devils Wednesday. This is the State of the Fan Address, episode 167, titled Road to the NHL Draft. I'm your host, Sam Wu, here with Pucks and Pitchforks blog editor-in-chief, Nick Villano, streaming live on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, Twitter Live, and Twitch on the Primetime Radio Network. Today we have a fine podcast as we're ramping up the coverage, ramping up the content. We will be in your cars, whether we're live right now or tomorrow's commute, wherever you get your podcasts. But tonight, our special guest, a fan favorite of this podcast, Shayna Goldman of The Athletic.
My turn?
Yeah, your turn. I try to hype it up as much as I can.
Yeah, I'm so excited to talk to Shayna Goldman. And honestly, we almost had to do a breaking news podcast earlier, Sam, with this Kevin Fiala discussion. But I can't wait. We're going to talk to her about the draft. We're going to talk to her about what the Devils are going to do this offseason. We're also, one thing I'm excited to ask her about, she's been following the Stanley Cup. She's been doing a lot for the Athletic in regards to that. I'm excited to say, are the Colorado Avalanche a template the Devils think that they could follow or that they should follow? Is this something that, is there a one-to-one scenario here? Because there's some comparisons that say, the Devils have the same type of pieces that the Colorado Avalanche had 5 years ago. The only thing that you're missing there is that Cale Makar piece, but that one's a hard one to get. But
I'm putting the pressure on Luke.
Yeah, Luke can be that. He could be that from the left side. The right side is definitely a little bit more valuable, but if he could be that from the left side. Is Roman Josi left-handed? Now I'm drawing a blank, but either way, you want that level of defenseman. And honestly, Sam, I keep telling myself I'm not going to talk myself into it, but the offseason it started 2 days ago, and congrats to the Colorado Avalanche for winning the Stanley Cup. But the offseason started 2 days ago, and I'm buying in already, Sam. I'm already talking myself into it. I'm like, they're already making the smart moves. Let's talk about this Kevin Fiala trade, right? Kevin Fiala, 85 points this season. The Devils were specifically tied to him all day today, Sam. There is even one report which ended up being not so much what Elliot Friedman said, but it sounded like the Devils were the front runner, maybe battling with the Ottawa Senators, and then here come the Los Angeles Kings from behind and do what it takes to get the deal done. But here's the thing, Sam, is that I'm not upset about what happened.
Neither am I.
I'm going to tell you why I'm not upset.
Tell me.
You have this supreme asset in Jesper Bratt, and Jesper Bratt needs to get paid. And a side note, I think that this contract will help get the ball rolling on that and kind of push the situation in the right direction. But Jesper Bratt needs to get paid. I think if Kevin Fiala gets 7-9 on a team that was desperate to get him, I think you can kind of get Jesper Bratt for around that Nico Hischier number, maybe 7.2, something like that. And I think you get this done. If you can get him to sign a 7x7, 7 years, $7 million each year, I think you're in good shape. But as far as Kevin Fiala goes, the assets that the Kings gave to the Minnesota Wild, the Devils did not have. Those assets are very high upside, not there yet assets. The Devils have two kinds of assets. They have a bunch of really good assets that are a little bit of a flyer. Most of these prospects are flyers, but really good. Gritsik, Mook Madulin, even Stillman, Fabian Zetterlund, Riley Walsh, those kinds of assets. We have a lot of them. Tice Thompson, I could go down the list. There's a lot of them. We have a lot of that. And then we have supreme assets, which is the second overall pick, Alexander Holtz, Dawson Mercer, Luke Hughes, those types of assets. We don't have anything in between those two. mid first round picks. Kind of something like what like Michael McLeod was with him coming up. Think about like what his value was when he was at Mississauga. Think about like, Jesper Boquist as a prospect. We're missing that right now. We just don't have those exciting prospects that get teams to kind of move the needle without us putting our future in jeopardy. Scott Wheeler ranked the prospect that Los Angeles sent to Minnesota as their 7th best prospect. That was a couple months ago, but I'm sure he's like around there. If not, he's either 6th or 8th or 7th. It's basically where he's at. You're not going to lose your mind. That for us, our 7th or 8th best prospect is, I'd have to look at my list, but I would assume it's something like Zetterlund. And, to match the assets that the Kings sent to the Minnesota Wild would have cost us Alexander Holtz. And I don't want to do that for Kevin Fiala, because then you're taking two things. You're doing two things to yourself. You're going to sign Jesper Bratt to a contract. It's going to be a huge risk contract. Those $7 million deals for guys who have one really good season under their belt is a risk. You can't have 2 of those contracts on the book when you also sent supreme assets. I didn't want the 2 contracts on the book, but I was kind of talking myself into Fiala because I think he is a good player. I think his floor is a lot higher than Bratt's. His floor is like 50 points, while Bratt's floor is 30. Bratt's floor is getting sat down and healthy scratch to send a message, and that's never happening to Fiala. But again, if you sign both of those contracts and they both go terribly, this whole thing you built, Sam, could go to hell. Look at Minnesota. Minnesota built and built and built. They waited and waited for Kirill Kaprizov. They finally got Kirill Kaprizov. He was everything they could have hoped for, and it's probably going to lead to first-round exits for the next 4 years until those Parisi and Suter buyouts go off the books. So these are the things that you're trying to avoid if you're the Devils. And Tom Fitzgerald, and before him, Ray Shero, did a really good job of avoiding risk. Avoid the risk and take the reward. It hasn't worked out as you would have hoped. I think there's a lot of luck that goes along with that. You didn't know that Corey Schneider was going to turn into a sieve. You didn't know that every goalie that you signed after him was going to turn into me in net, or was going to, you know what I mean? Like, you didn't know that it was going to go as badly as it possibly could. But Sam, if they get any goalie, anyone, next year is going to be a fun year. Any goalie. And I want other pieces. I want, and I was kind of talking with some people on Twitter, and one person just straight up asked me, all right, if you didn't want to spend on Fiala, who do you think they're going to get then? And I've hit this well before, Sam. I think they're going to be in on Gaudreau, but I don't think they're going to be the winner. I think they're going to lose that. I think the Flyers are going to come over the top.
Yeah. I would think so.
I think the Flyers are going to pay him $11 and figure it out. $11 million a year. I don't think the Devils want to go there. I think it's Tarasenko. I think Vladimir Tarasenko is coming to New Jersey. I think he's wearing red and black next year. I think he comes with a 5-year extension. I think it's going to be a fine extension, maybe like 6 to 7, somewhere in between there. I don't think he's going to ask for a ton of money. He's a really good player too, and he kind of coasted through next year and still was phenomenal. I think that's where they go. I think they go for Vladimir Tarasenko. How would you feel about that?
I'm going to interrupt you.
If that's the end.
I got to interrupt you because I'm looking at social media. There's a lot of people on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and Twitter Live right now. I'm just like, look, there's just too many comments, going on. I know Benji Stone is, going crazy on the Facebook Live, but Shane Van Sickle on YouTube Live, DeBrincat. What about
I would
that
love
name?
DeBrincat. Okay, but DeBrincat's going to cost you. It came out today that they want 3 premium assets. 3. So that means that if you send them the second overall pick and Alexander Holtzam, that's not enough.
No. They shouldn't even consider that, so.
When David Pastrnak, who I like better as a player, is available for less, I know there's the risk of the contract there, but he's available for less. Mm-hmm. I'm going to go for Pastrnak over DeBrincat. That's just me. I would pay Pastrnak more. This isn't like a size thing. This isn't like I think he's not good enough. I think DeBrincat's a legit 40-goal scorer, but you have another asset that is also a 40-goal scorer with a small, tiny bit more of a track record Pastrnak has than DeBrincat. It's basically menial. It's probably not even worth bringing up. But he does not cost 3 premium assets. The Boston Bruins and Don Sweeney are not going to ask you for Alexander Holtz in the second overall pick. I think if you go to Boston right now and you say, I'll give you Slafkovsky or Cooley, whichever one you want, I think you get Pastrnak. Maybe you throw in a couple of other, Benjamin Bogart or something, or Topias Villain or something like that. Like if it was one of these like 20 to 25 to 15 prospects and then a third round pick, second overall, third round pick, and a middling prospect, I think gets it done.
I'm in the opposite direction.
You want DeBrincat?
I'm in the opposite. No, well, that second overall pick to me is valuable. I would try not to give that up as much as possible, unless it's a swap for somebody else's 2023 pick, and then you mingle something like that. But honestly, Nick, it should be interesting. There's a lot that's going to happen to the road to the NHL draft. And before I get our next guest, it's official, and we're going to promo it tomorrow. A live draft party.
Woo!
We're performing live at Pasta Grill by Enzo's in Hackettstown, New Jersey from 6 to 10 p.m. The Hockey on Tap and Let's Go Devils podcasts are joining forces just like last season, where we had probably about, 50, 60 people come out. Outside, if weather permitting, it will be outside, inside if it starts raining. We're going to be doing a live draft podcast throughout, and I think we're going to line up some special guests to come onto the podcast. I'm not sure if it's virtually. Could there be somebody there? I don't know. We're poor party planners, folks. But it all seems to come together the last, the last minute.
Well, but that's the big week because we got the big draft preview show a week from today.
Absolutely.
You're going to get hours and hours of content because I'm doing my best to get you some of your favorites on this one. I'm trying to get as many prospect people as I can on this show for next week. I still got to work out with Sam. Sam's got to tell me when we could start. Sam's too busy for us, but
you could start when I tell you we could start, 7 p.m.
7. There you go. All right. 7 p.m. next week, we're going to have the draft preview show. I'm going to have as many guests as I possibly can. Try to get on that show just to kind of get you an idea of where the Devils are. Now, I haven't come up with a backup plan if they trade this pick. I'm not going to lie to you. I don't know if we're still going to do a draft preview show. Whatever. Let's do it. Let's do a 3-hour draft preview show. 7 to 10. We're going to go hard. We're going to go fast. We're going to go loose. We're going to have a lot of fun next week on the draft preview show. And then I don't know if Sam invited me or not, but I'm going to invite myself onto that Thursday show. And I'm going to go live with them as well. I'm going to talk about the second overall pick. I'm going to react with all of you. I probably won't be on the whole show like I was last year. But I will definitely be on that first part where we talk about the drafts, we process what's going on, and then we also react to the pick. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to set up that show. There's so much to talk about. Oh, my head is spinning. This Fiala stuff really came at the best time for content. Really excited about that. But we have so much draft content. We have Fiala content. We got other free agency and trade content on pucksandpitchforks.com right now. I'm so excited to get to talk more To one thing, Sam's back. So, but real quick, I got to promote that. I wrote an article about 3 players that y'all should be excited about if they start falling in the draft. And I think this is going to be one of those weird drafts where people fall. And I think that the Devils need to be on that phone. When Tom Fitzgerald, remember Sam, he told Pierre LeBrun that his phone did not ring during the trade deadline. And he tried to check to make sure it was working. Well, it'll be working. It better be working this year. Have 3 phones. Go get Lou Lamoriello's red line phone. I don't care what you got to do. Make sure your phone's working at that draft, because if somebody like, Savoy or somebody like, there's so many players who could fall in this draft. If they start falling, you got to call. You got to make the pick. You got to trade up and you got to take them.
Yeah. Well, speaking of phones, we have somebody on the bat line, a fan favorite of the Let's Go Devils podcast. Her last appearance was a hit. She's on again. Her name is Shayna Goldman. She's a writer for The Athletic. You can find her on Twitter at HeyShay. Shayna, you're on with Sam and Nick. How are you tonight?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
And Shayna, I believe this is your second time on the podcast, and that means that you are officially a friend of the Let's Go Devils podcast. It's a huge honor, and we really are honored to give that to you. No, I'm just kidding. No, you are a friend of the podcast. We're very excited to have you on. Talk to you about everything that's going on with the draft. Talk to you everything about what the Devils are doing. Real quick, though, I do have to pivot and ask you, what were your thoughts about the Devils not making that Fiala trade today?
It's a tricky one, the Fiala trade. I think that it helped the team to trade for him versus offer sheeting him, because I think they'd have to give up more to hit that salary tier, the compensation. But I understand looking at it saying you can give up assets and cap space, or you can wait until free agency day and just give up cap space. And obviously you give up a little bit in the player's age that way, going for, say, a 28-year-old to a 25 or 26-year-old. But, it can be an okay strategy if you plan on balancing the cap accordingly, which is going to be the biggest question of all, like how they manage to do that.
Now you said a name. You said a number for age there. 28 years old. Isn't that how old Johnny Gaudreau is?
I have heard that.
Listen, through the grapevine, I'm hearing that name and I'm hearing that age. I'm just saying, but that's something we could get into a little bit later when we get closer to free agency, which is in like 2 weeks. This is crazy. I've said you are one of the hardest working people in hockey. You're one of the hardest working writers, because you have it feels like you have I don't want to say tentacles. I feel like that's a bad word for some, but you have your hands in so many different things. And, one of those things is the Devils, and another thing is the draft. So this kind of like puts them both together, where the Devils have the 2nd overall pick. It's probably one of the most, I have no idea what they're going to do with this pick. I mean, for a while, it looked like it was Slafkovsky and nobody else, but now it's, a lot of things have snuck in, and even Shane Wright is a possibility there, but you got Cooley, you got Nemec, you got Zarishek, you even got, Gauthier is somebody who's getting a lot of play. You're Tom Fitzgerald. I want you to kind of like get into the GM's chair. What are you doing with this pick? Do you have a name that you really like 2nd overall, or do you not like somebody and you trade it?
It's really a tough one, because I think that if Shane Wright's still available, I could see them going for him. If Slafkovsky's still there, I feel like those are going to be the first, number 1 and number 2, as strong as some of the other players are around it. The only thing, like, if I'm the Devils, I am considering, and I don't think we see this enough in hockey, is wondering how to move lower in the top 10, maybe 15, because you can still get a high draft pick and another asset attached to it, maybe like an impact player plus, say, the 10th or 9th overall pick, and move the 2nd overall pick out. Like, I think that might be an interesting option for them as well. But it is a great opportunity to, draft that high. If Slafkovsky's right there, it does seem tempting, because obviously you should be drafting for skill, and a lot of people have him as, 1 or 2 in the draft. So they'd be accomplishing that, and then it checks off a need as well. And I always think that you should be going for skill over need. It really doesn't matter if you have 20 centers, still draft the center and figure it out later. But if there's a high impact winger that everybody is enamored with, and rightfully so, given his skill set, I don't know if they get away from that. I think that it'd be hard to ignore.
I kind of agree with you. Again, going for need is always a bad way to go about the draft, but if you're comparing Slafkovsky and Cooley, I see menial differences between the two, and if you see like small differences, but you see one that fits completely much better on your team, I think that's how you got to go, right?
Yeah. It has to be minute differences there that you'd be, if they're that closely ranked, then obviously the next consideration has to be readiness or position and things like that. But until you get to that point where you really see that the skill sets are that close, like it has to be that close for you to start changing the way it should be.
So, you and Dom, and I'm not even going to attempt Dom's name because he made fun of Julian for messing it up on the Athletic Hockey Show. So I'm not going there. But everybody knows who Dom is. You and Dom have been really crushing it with the analytics throughout the playoffs. You've really kind of given us an easier way to digest them and to kind of give us a way to be able to follow along really easily. And obviously, those analytics always pointed to the Colorado Avalanche. Like they were the favorites coming into the season. They were the favorites coming into the playoffs by a lot. It just seemed like every model said that. It's going to move. It's going to take heaven and earth to stop them from winning the Stanley Cup, and they won. They at the end of the day, they beat the Tampa Bay Lightning in 6 games. Now, when I look at where the Colorado Avalanche were 5 years ago, and I look at where the Devils are now, there are some similarities. Jack Hughes, a number 1 overall center who's playing really well. Nico Hischier and Landeskog have some similar, tendencies. There's things that you could see there. If Luke Hughes can be 80% of what Cale Makar is, 75% of what Cale Makar is, then you're in really good shape there. Are you seeing the same things that maybe my biased brain is seeing, where the Devils have pieces in place where they can become a really, really, really good contender? Or do you think that there's just a lot up in the air right now that maybe, this is too much of a jump?
I think that they have a couple things. They have like the start of a skilled core, but I don't think it's at the caliber of Colorado's yet. And I think a big difference is that they invested in that core sooner. And there are benefits to it. Obviously, like the cap is different than it was then. So an $8 million contract now is different what it was 5 years ago. And the Devils, for some of their players like Hischier and Hughes, went for like the big second contracts, which teams are starting to trend towards for the right reasons, because you're paying for present and future performance instead of past performance. So those things all check off. But I think that there's still a couple other things. We see the Devils make moves in the offseason. We've seen them be aggressive in the offseason. Right, wrong, or sideways, they have tried to make a splash. I don't know if we're seeing enough accenting the roster throughout the year. I don't think we're seeing enough of them taking advantage of another team's misfortunes. Like, think, the Taves trade, or finding a piece like Villano. And there have been other players around the league that, they haven't, I don't want to say that they haven't spotted, because 31 other teams haven't spotted, but it's finding their own version of Jonathan Marchessault and Carter Verhaeghe and Villano. Like, those are the players they should be looking for a little bit more. And, they need to have closer to average goaltending, which they don't right now. So that's like another, black X for them. But, once they get their strength and their identity, and I think that they're getting towards building one with this core, then we can start talking about, do they play to their strengths? Do they in high pressure situations and things like that? And then kind of dig deeper into coaching. And we still don't know what the bench is going to fully look like next year. So that's another consideration. I think the world of Jared Bednar as a coach, and I think every team can be taking notes. So maybe they're starting to get the pieces there, but I think we need to see a little bit more and have a little bit more consistency in the season before we start making those comparisons. But it's the model to follow without question.
So you brought up the goalie. It's the elephant in the room to all these Johnny Gaudreau, Kevin Fiala, whoever you want to talk about the Devils getting this year. I think it's going to be Vladimir Tarasenko at the end of the day, but if they don't get a goalie and they somehow go into next year with Mackenzie Blackwood and Jonathan Bernier, I don't think any of it matters. You're one of the people that, I go to a few different writers with things that I'm on the fence about. I went to you about a certain goalie. and you said that it would be a good idea for the Devils to be in on this person, but it doesn't mean it's happening. What do you think the Devils are going to do, and what do you think the Devils should do when it comes to the goaltending position?
I mean, I do think that they should kick the tires on a goaltender like John Gibson, who's had a couple, bad seasons on a really bad team. And, goaltending's tough to project, but that is someone that has that elite ceiling and hasn't been far from it. I mean, he had a great part of last season until the wheels came off. So, I don't know if he's available. We hear mixed reports. If the Devils are looking for a goalie, they should look at him. But I think that they do have to consider too, like, when we talked about Fiala before, do you give up assets and do you give up cap space? Both are an asset. Like, I feel like sometimes people forget what an asset cap space is, So if you're trading for someone, you immediately are now throwing more things into it. And for a player like John Gibson, you're giving a lot into it. So it really is tough. I think Husso is an interesting pick for sure. He would probably be higher on the list. I think higher than Darcy Kemper, even though Darcy Kemper is the goaltender with the Stanley Cup ring. And it's not even about his postseason play. You look at age and how goalies age and players tend to age. I could see someone closer to like a Husso or even, a Jack Campbell being on the radar instead, because I think they fit the age range a little bit better instead of a goalie who's, you're signing at age 32 versus late 20s or even 30. And for a backup, I think say they don't have Blackwood or he's not the 1B, I think someone like Charlie Lindgren's an interesting reclamation. I don't even want to say reclamation project. That's too harsh, but an interesting under the radar pick for a backup.
What about Georgiev? Because I know Larry Brooks tied the Devils to Georgiev, and he says he doesn't think that the Rangers are going to qualify him.
I mean, Georgiev's a tough one because the Rangers overvalued him when he was definitely at his peak value, even though they knew Shesterkin was coming up the ranks. So that was a situation I think was mishandled at the time, and it's obviously hurt his value. He's shown that in a starting capacity, or even as a 1B, he can be very valuable. But when he isn't getting frequent starts, it weighs on his game. And I think, a lot of goaltenders will probably cite the same thing if they were in that situation. So I think that if he had a starting role, and he's a goalie that can handle chaos in front of him without question, if you look before this year and even before last year, the team he was playing behind in New York and even Hartford for a bit there, it was the definition of defensive chaos. So is he an option? Sure. Could he be someone I think maybe better as a 1B than a 1A? So is a crease of Blackwood Georgiev the worst in the league? Probably not, as long as they make defensive improvements. It's just a little hard to speak to who would be the best fit in net, honestly, unless you're talking about the top of the class until you know what the defense looks like. Because some goalies are better behind chaos because of the way that they move in net, and some goalies are better behind a low event team.
That makes sense. That all makes perfect sense. It's all going to play itself out in the next couple of weeks, Shayna. We're going to know a lot more about the Devils on July 15th than we know right now on what is it, June 29th. So, but Shayna Goldman, writer at The Athletic, co-host of the Too Many Men podcast, which is, if you're not listening to that one's a lot of fun. Her, Sarah Siv, and Allison are really great. But Shayna, what else do you got coming up? What can people expect to see from you? What kind of content you got coming?
So I actually have a Devil story coming up. It'll either be at the end of this week or early next, depending on timing with everything. If things keep happening, like we see more trades, since we just saw Fiala is at the first shoe to drop, might change things. But just something about, how aggressive they could be this off season. And there's going to be a ton of draft content at The Athletic. It's not my specialty per se, but there are people who've been following these prospects for, months in the last year or two. So there's going to be a lot of content from experts. And then from there, I can, tackle some of the NHL caliber things. But that and outside of Devil stuff, I do have something coming out with Dom on Offer Sheets tomorrow.
Ooh. If you add Jesper Brad on that, we're not going to be friends tomorrow. We'll be friends the next day. But if you mention my boy Brad, I'm going to be sad.
He is on there, but it's just, what it would take, I think, for a team to get him in an offer sheet. And we wrote this before the Fiala deal, so I think it is a little more interesting when you look at the, dollars and cents of it. I still think he starts on the Devils next year. I don't think the Devils are going to let him go so easily. But if they did, it would be because Brett's getting paid.
Okay. Well, we'll be happy for him. But Shayna Goldman, thank you so much. Well, we can't wait to have you on again. We've had a lot of fun, and talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me.
That is Shayna Goldman of The Athletic, fan favorite, now a good friend of the Let's Go Devils podcast. Officially.
Yeah. And she had a lot of
second
good information
time
there. We hit just about everything, Sam. We hit goalie, we hit free agency, we hit Fiala, we hit draft, we hit the where we're at, where we're on the trajectory, and that's good insight about what we're doing and what the Avalanche are doing. And she's right. The Devin Toews trade was stellar. The Matt Duchene trade was stellar. I think they signed Nichushkin. I'd have to double check, but stellar. And they're finding guys who need, and I think the Devils have tried this. They tried it with Janssen. It worked for a minute, and then it stopped working. They tried it with Tatar. I think that Tatar is going to look a lot better next year than he did this year. But again, he's not giving you what Nichushkin is. Yeah, he's not giving you what Nichushkin's giving. He's not going to give you a Toews, or not even close. They have to find a guy who can be a tweener first liner with one of these deals. And again, I think that they get in it, and I think when the price finally comes out, they kind of back off at the last second. They've been risk averse, Sam. They have. They've taken risks on low risks. Like Dougie Hamilton technically is a risk. A contract is a risk, but you're not giving up assets. You're not giving up capital. You're only giving up salary cap space and money, I guess, but you have it. You have plenty of money. Josh Harris is worth a good $1 jillion. So I really liked Dougie Hamilton. I think that he's just an underrated player. So you did take a risk there, but a calculated risk. They took a risk with Nikita Gusev, and it went terribly. They took a risk with technically they took a risk with Taylor Hall, and it worked out. But that was how many years ago was that? What's today? 5 years? Or yesterday was 5? Today
6
was 5
years,
right?
6 years.
Okay. So today's the anniversary. Happy trade is 1 for 1 day. It's great. It worked out amazingly for the Devils, but it's now you look at it, it didn't get them out of the rebuild like we thought it would. They took and there's other players that weren't such a chance. Like Sammy Vatanen was a pretty locked down asset when they traded for him, but they traded Adam Henrique, so there was risk there. Adam Henrique was a fan favorite, but I think at the end of the day that worked out. I don't know who that is. I'd have to look at the cap strap teams. I think you look at the Tampa Bay Lightning, and they're in a weird position where, they can't sign everybody that they're losing. I think Palat's gone. I think that.
Where would he go?
I think he's going to go
I think he just wants – he's going to get paid.
He wants the bag. He just wants the bag, Sam. He wants the bag, and I think it's going to be something like Seattle or Chicago or something. It's not going to be someplace. He's not going to go to a big team, but he's going to go to a place where he can have a big role, and he's going to get paid. But do you know who I really like from the Lightning? And I think is a player that can grow into a different role. I think he can be something really good. Is Nick Paul. I really liked what I saw from Nick Paul in the playoffs. He was such a great addition to that Tampa Bay Lightning team, and I just don't think they have the assets to sign him. Maybe they're going to move some things out, but you got Braden Point on that new contract, Steven Stamkos, Nikita Kucherov, Victor Hedman, Andrei Vasilevsky. They're some of the best players at the position in the world, so they deserve the contracts that they have, Sam. But they're getting paid. Like they don't have anybody on these entry-level deals, and the Devils are in a position where they've gotten kind of lucky in that while they wasted Nico Hischier's entry-level deal and they completely wasted Jack Hughes' entry-level deal. That's going to end up being, and Shayna kind of talked about that a little bit, how he signed the long-term deal for the big money instead of kind of a middle-of-the-road deal. Like, I think she would, I'd have to ask her, but I think what she was referencing was the Nathan McKinnon deal. I think he's making like somewhere around $6 million. Jack Hughes opted for $8 million, but again, the cap is going to go up, so maybe we'll be in better shape. I do think at the end of the day, that's going to be a phenomenal contract, and I think Nico's is as well. But the point being,
well, you can't really blame the Devils too much on Jack Hughes's entry-level contract. I think COVID had a lot to do with his derailment in the middle, in 2021. I mean, he took a beating.
And he got COVID in the middle of like COVID. You know what I mean? Like COVID, So that is what it is. But that rookie season just is when you really wanted to kind of go for it and get the bag.
Yeah.
And there's a lot that went wrong. Taylor Hall was just, I'm sorry, but he wasn't into it. It wasn't like when they lost those first 7 games in a row, Hall was out. He was. And he was you could tell he was playing at half speed because he was getting a ton of assists. He was still the best player on this team, but he was letting his skill dictate the play, and he wasn't driving to hard areas. He wasn't doing what he did in his MVP year, which was doing everything he needed to do to get the puck in the back of the net, whether that was him or the other guy. In 2019, he was letting the play come to him, and he was letting his skill overtake, and he was it kind of showed in his game. He just had a weird, you know what reminds me of, Sam? Do you follow basketball like at all?
Yes.
So it was Julius Randle. It was
I hate the Knicks.
Okay, but are you aware of Julius Randle's fall from grace? Mm-hmm. Taylor Hall is Julius Randle, and Julius Randle is Taylor Hall. Something goes wrong that second year after you're a superstar, and it just kind of sours you a little bit. And I still, I've turned around completely on Taylor Hall. I don't hate Taylor Hall anymore. I never really hated him because he's brought me so much joy, but the way he went out just put a bad taste in a lot of our mouths, and it is what it is. There's nothing you can do about it now.
But I like the fruits of that trade.
Yeah.
Taylor Hall to Arizona because, the Kevin Ball, you've got Dawson Mercer out of it.
So good.
Yeah, so you know what? That Taylor...
And, of course, the incomprehensible Andrew Hammond that you got.
Yeah, yeah, and you know what? It's funny because, you're talking about Adam Larson. That all traces back to John McLean's coaching tenure that got the Devils that 4th overall pick in 2011. So it's kind of funny how that all worked out. Had Jacques Lemaire, had he stayed, it could have been a totally different story. But the way it's written, John McLean had a bad start to that season. He gets canned. And then, the Devils get Adam Larson. He was all right. He was going on the up and up, and then bam, they traded him. 1 for 1.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing: is that they mismanaged Adam Larson pretty terribly.
Oh yeah,
Adam Larson was supposed to be like
the next Victor Hedman.
Yeah, he was supposed to be one of the best in the league at his position. He's just not. He's a good player. Yeah. He's good. He was good with Edmonton, but they didn't miss him this year when he went to Seattle. So, I don't know. The situation is very interesting. I'm intrigued about what the Devils are going to do next week. I'm intrigued about – you know what, Sam? I'm intrigued what they're going to do this week because they lost. The Kings won the Fiala sweepstakes, right? So now the Devils are sitting here knowing that they lost. And they've been losing a lot, whether that's in trade talks – or not trade talks, but in negotiations with other teams. They haven't been able to make those moves. Oh, by the way, another asset in that Taylor Hall trade is Jonas Siegenthaler, who is looking like he might be the best move that Tom Fitzgerald has made. Even better than Dawson Mercer's draft pick, even better than a lot of these other things. That Siegenthaler trade, he might be – I'm going to write a piece later this summer. This isn't going to come until after free agency and all that, but I think I'm going to advocate for a Siegenthaler-Hamilton top line next year. And I think that's going to be a good top line. I think that and Shayna Goldman made a reference to our defense. I disagree with her a little bit on that. I think our defense is fine. We were 6th in the league in high danger chances allowed last year. It is hard to have a good defense and to get into the game when your goalie just absolutely sucks. And I don't think that Blackwood is someone you should technically give up on just for nothing. I think that if you don't get assets for him, just give him another shot. And maybe you go with Georgia. Maybe you go with Husso. Maybe you go with Jack Campbell. There's a lot of names that have been – I honestly, I'm looking at the names. I think you just have to go for a trade. I think you got to trade for a goalie and I think I'm changing my mind on Gibson. John Gibson – that contract is scary, Sam, but he's younger. He's relatively healthy. He was once the best in the league, and then the Ducks just sucked and sucked and sucked. Why not, right?
I have a different assessment on it, just a different opinion. I just find just watching all the games last season, doing all the pregame and game day live and Devils After Dark, it's a great goalie, an elite goalie can cover up a lot of your mistakes. But is that in the Devils development, do you want that? Or do you want to fix these mistakes and fix these holes before you bring in a elite goaltender? Because it could give you a false positive or fool's gold. Like in 2018, we thought, hey, MVP type season. But that MVP type season, Hart Trophy season by Taylor Hall, covered up a lot of things about the Devils. And they just barely got into the playoffs. And then only lasted 5 games.
But then what did the
Just
Devils
like the Rangers with Shesterkin. If they didn't have Shesterkin, they would have no business being in the Eastern Conference Finals. Maybe even the playoffs.
They have a little bit more. I mean, Zibanejad's a great player. Panarin, it's still really, really good. Kreider had a really good season. They have stuff. But I think it's probably the same that the 2018 Devils had. With Hall and Palmieri and Henrique or not Henrique, Heischer, and there were pieces there. Severson obviously is somebody. There's just so much going on. My cat is yelling. I don't know if you hear my cat. My cat is now yelling. But she agrees. She agrees that we should go after John Gibson. Widow agrees that John Gibson is the answer. Yeah, but no, there's just. Let me ask you this, Sam. What does your gut say? Do you think that the Devils are going to make a move this week? Like a major move. I'm not talking about something small. I'm talking about something Fiala level.
Honestly, I think they're just going to be trying to drive up the prices for everybody else, but I don't think they're going to make I don't think they're going to pull the trigger.
You think that's what this was? You think the Devils were like, this is for 2012? Like, here you go?
No, you know what? No. That's not what I meant. What I meant is they're not going to overpay. But because they're in it, other teams will overpay. So it's kind of like, unless you're going to get a great deal and it helps the team, the goal here is you don't negotiate to rip off the other GM.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way. You make trades if you think it's going to get to where this organization needs to be. So, right now, as I see it, the the goalie situation, the goalie market, you're going to have to overpay, and it's up to Tom Fitzgerald to really think about, are you willing to overpay now when you really don't have a great team on record?
Yeah.
But you have an up-and-coming team. And secondly, when you look at, some of these trades, DeBrincat is a player that you would have to give up somebody. You can't just get him for, a couple draft picks, some money, cash, and, and future considerations or whatever. It's not going to work that way. But what I think is valuable in the whole grand scheme of things, where the Devils need to be, is that second overall pick. So, again, unless you're getting an unbelievable deal with that second overall pick that gets you where you need to be fast, both short-term and long-term, I think the Devils should stand pat. I honestly think that you've gone this far being patient. What's another year or two? It's,
So would you do it in a
that's
deal
just
for
me.
DeBrincat or Pasternak?
DeBrincat, yeah, I would do a deal, but
Okay.
it's a matter of who. Would you put Bratt in that deal?
No.
Okay.
I would put Holtz in the deal, but I won't put Bratt.
Mm-hmm.
But that's where I end. You don't get anything else.
Yeah.
You can get like a nothing asset. Like these AHL only guys that maybe, like what a I don't want to disparage anybody, but you know what I mean? Like these guys that are just not, they're not going to be a ton of anything. But if they were like, well, if you had Zetterlund into the deal, I'd be like, no. You get what you get. You get Holtz. You get the second overall pick. Those are you can start a dynasty with those two pieces if they work out. You know what I mean? You can have the greatest scoring offense if you have Slafkovsky and Holtz. So the Devils are giving up some a monumental upside for a guaranteed asset. And that report that they're looking for 3 first-round level assets, I would argue that the second overall pick is worth even more than 2 first-round level assets. Because if you make a trade with even the Penguins, who've been drafted, I think they're 21st this year, that's kind of where they are. If they give you 3 first-round picks and they're in the mid-20s, that's worth that. I wouldn't trade 3 21st, 25th, and 27th overall for second overall ever in any draft. So having that second overall pick is the wild card in all this. I'm so glad they didn't. It was clear that was never really on the table in the Fiala trade. I honestly don't even think 7th overall from Ottawa was on the table. I know that was the conversation. So when the Devils, I know Elliot Friedman said that the Devils would be willing to trade the pick when it was 6th. Now it's 2nd. I don't even think that the 6th overall pick, I don't think they were going to do that. Maybe they would.
Yeah.
I don't know. But either way, that's I don't know what else you got, Sam. Is that it?
No, I've got some observations, comments around the league. I just want to give some props and kudos to 3 New Jerseyans.
Ooh.
3 New Jerseyans.
My future state-mates.
Number one, Deputy Commissioner Bill Daly. Substituting for Gary Bettman, which is a tradition where the fans boo, the Stanley Cup. Deputy Commissioner Bill Daly hails from Kinnelon, New Jersey, and it was good to see him there. With the Stanley Cup to the Colorado Avalanche, and he may be the future NHL commissioner at some point in the future. We should try to get him on to the podcast. Also, Greg Wyshynski was a writing machine, ESPN.com, a podcasting machine as well. But the person that I like the most and her stock is rising right now, is Emily Kaplan, who we've had here on the State of the Fan Address, hails from Montclair, New Jersey. Montclair, New Jersey. A Penn Stater. So I'm a little biased here. But she, I was reading somewhere and then listening to a podcast that she raised her hand. It's like, all right, I'm going to try this when the ESPN got the deal. And to go from a reporter on the digital side, and she does make appearances on ESPN and some of their shows, and highly respected. And she's in the Stanley Cup Finals doing those interviews on the ice. And I thought the coverage was not bad. It was not bad overall, the Stanley Cup Finals. I thought, is it Sean McDonough? I thought he did a great job. Also, I hate to say it, Ray Ferraro. Wow. It's been a long time since we saw him on ESPN and ABC when they had back in 2003, 2004. Wow. I thought he was really, really good. So
I mean, there were certain parts of the ESPN playoff broadcast that left me wanting more. The Stanley Cup was not that. The three-headed monster of Ray Ferraro, McDonough, and Emily Kaplan was so phenomenal. Emily Kaplan, I've seen hundreds of sideline reports in my life between football and hockey and baseball. And I can't think of a better consistent, I've seen it in hockey too. So much where they ask these questions. Pierre Maguire would ask these questions and get nothing answers.
Yeah.
And Emily Kaplan was getting personality in the middle of the play. Like usually those are just like, do you remember Mad TV back in the day where that one character go be like, look what I can do. Look what I can do. Like that's usually what it is. Like, look, I could get Aaron Boone on the TV in the middle of the play. Look at him reacting. Look at him. He's not paying attention to us. Look at that. Look at that. We're so cool. I could get,
and that's tough to do. It's like doing an elevator pitch on live TV and trying to extract and grab their attention. And it's not like she had every question was a softball question. I think the closest I can think of is maybe Susie Kolber, because she was always on top.
She was really good back in the day, yeah.
Yeah, she was always on top, and especially that Joe Namath incident. To keep your composure and all that kind of stuff, and just run with it and all that. But she threw herself in the fire, and I thought she performed fantastic. That takes a lot of guts to do, and that was really enjoyable. And what makes me happy, she is from New Jersey, and she likes bagels.
We're gonna claim her as long as we can. We're going to claim.
Yeah, we got to get her on a second time, because then she can be an official friend of this podcast. Just one more time.
I'll let you know how that goes.
Please tell her that we'll send her 50 bagels from New Jersey, all hand rolled, handmade from scratch. I know a good place.
We'll make
you do it in house.
Hey, please talk to us again.
Yeah, we'll ship them, overnight it, or same day, whatever it takes, to her estate somewhere. I don't know where she lives, and we'll do that. But yeah, that's a couple.
It's kind of funny. Like I had to stop in New Jersey last week, 2 weeks ago, something like that, a little over a week ago. We woke up at my mom's house. I was like, you know what, wife of mine, we got to find a bagel. We got to find a bagel place. We're gonna get a bagel. We got the bagel. It was great. I'm coming back to Jersey bagels, Sam. I don't know how they are in South Jersey, where I'm going. I'm assuming they're not as good as they are where you are, but still better than those Florida bagels. I'm going to tell you that.
Well, yeah. Well, yeah, they're probably they're probably better. There's a lot of good bagel places up here, but there's also good pasta places up here, like Pasta Grill by Enzo's, beautiful Hackettstown, New Jersey, in the Mansfield section off of Route 57. Yeah, we'll be there live on July 7th for our draft party. We're broadcasting live. You get to see all the behind the scenes. You get to see all the equipment. You get to see Beer Baron. You know, you'll see that Beer Baron just does nothing and then just shows up behind the mic. And then you see me and Short Sky. Short Sky will probably have T-shirts. You can buy our T-shirts. You can support the podcast. And also, why we do it? Well, we also want to support small businesses. Restaurants got slaughtered, the last couple of years. We want to support Pasta Grill by Enzo's. And we're 4-0 when I have the bolognese at Enzo's. You know, when we did the game day live, when we're on the road, and, you know, I get that free pasta bolognese at Enzo's.
I gotta ask, Sam, and there's no reason why I'm asking this. There's no purpose to this at all. But is Enzo's closer to the Prudential Center than Stone Pony?
Yeah, I would think so.
Huh.
I would think so. It's probably about 50 minutes, 45 minutes.
I looked it up on the Google Maps. About 50 minutes. So I think you're okay. Just curious of what was closer to the Prudential Center, the Stone Pony or the draft party at Hackettstown.
Yeah, you know what? We wanted to keep it in North Jersey, and when we talked to the fans, there were a lot of fans that actually came out. Remember when I left you, in the green room for about an hour because I didn't check my phone? Yeah. A lot of fans told us this. It's just so convenient. Can you please do this again? Because it's, when for the regular season, you go to the Prudential Center, it's a long drive. The Devils don't come out that way. And there are a lot of Devils fans. And we know because we saw the fans that actually showed up. And we barely even promoted it. And it was a great time. We were outdoors. DJ Shelley was there. Now she's unavailable because she's doing all these weddings and all that kind of stuff right now. It's taking up her time. But yeah, I mean, it's a good time, and we're going to do a lot of these, now that things are opening up. And, remember Taj Lounge 973 as well, Game Day Live. Sometimes we did Devils After Dark there. It's a good time. By the way, YouTube Live, still a lot of people on. Brendan Warner says there's some good bakeries in South Jersey, Nick. Ocean City has some good bagels.
Okay. And I'll be working in AC, so that's not too far out from Ocean City. We'll have to check it out.
One of these days, we got to do it at Chickies and Pete's. State of the Fan address.
I'll be there. I'll be close.
Yeah. And all these Flyer fans, they'll be like, what the heck is this? What the heck is this?
It doesn't matter. We'll talk to them. We'll get some Fire fans on. Be like, are you happy with John Tortorella? Are you sure? Are you sure you're happy with John Tortorella?
You know what? No. We got to get Larry Brooks as a guest.
Oh, that'll go over like a fart in church, I swear. You know what I'm going to do, Sam?
What's that?
We'll go do the Chickies and Pete's live podcast, and I'll get a Claude Giroux jersey. It'll just be a Florida Panthers jersey. I'll just wear that, showcase that to everybody. Be like, oh, captain, my captain. Where have you gone?
Time out here. Tony P. I think his real name is Johnny Sack from Sopranos. He's busting my chops on the YouTube Live right now. He says, Sam Wu isn't about beef. Why get Shrimpy Boy Cooley?
Listen,
because
it's not part of your repertoire.
Because you draft best available.
All right, so real quick before we go, because I wrote about this yesterday, there is a distinct possibility that Shane Wright is there. a distinct. If Shane Wright is there, and I wrote about this at pucksandpictures.com, I went a little bit more in depth on it, why it might happen, and what the Devils should do. You take Shane Wright. You don't think about it. This isn't Nolan Patrick. This isn't other situations where the guy fell out of first overall. Shane Wright is the best player in this draft. It is not close. It is not. There's no argument. Shane Wright is the best player in this draft. You draft him, and you deal with the fact that you have 3 phenomenal centers later. That's what you do. You can drive play all day with Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier, and Shane Wright. All day. Look, right there. Right there. It was the one that was sitting right there. Right in that corner there on the bottom. You see Shane Wright. And right next to that, Sam, is the 3 options for the Devils to trade back into the first round. So here's the thing, Sam. What we talked about, and Tom Fitzgerald has talked about this specifically. He thinks that they have too many assets. He just thinks that he's dealing with a lot of prospects. A lot of them are kind of in bottom 6 players, at least right now. You know, we've seen somebody like Igor Sharangovich turn into a top 6 player after he was a bottom 6 player. We saw Yanni Kuokkanen do it too. He kind of fell back off the map, but I don't think that they need to take a second-round pick. I think you need a guarantee. I'm talking, and Sam, the one name that I'm looking at who might fall is Brad Lambert. If you remember, we had Corey Proman on a couple weeks ago, and he said he might fall to the second round. I think things have changed since then. I think the narrative has changed, and I don't think there's any chance to go to the second round. If he goes to 20, Sam, you call the Penguins, who need prospects. They need a lot of value. Well, we need one super really good player. If Brad Lambert goes past 20, you call the Penguins. You offer a second, a third, and a really good prospect. Because not a really good like Holtz, but second, third, Tice Thompson, if that gets it done. Brad Lambert, if he can screw his head on straight, he's going to be a superstar. And if he falls to 21, you do everything in your power to get back into the first round.
Very interesting.
That's on pucksandpitchforks.com.
By the way, just to add to Shane Wright, after reading Craig Button's scouting, how he ranked it, and the difference between Wright and Cooley, he likened Cooley as Sebastian Aho and Shane Wright as to Patrice Bergeron. And I would go either or. But if I had to choose between the two, because remember, my pick for Cooley was the assumption that Shane Wright would go first overall. I would go with Shane Wright.
You gotta.
You can't lose with that pick. These are fantastic. This is a good top 5. You could go either way, but Shane Wright seems like a guy that was born for this moment. Somebody that will work hard, and I think there's something about Shane Wright that I like. Just watching those promo interviews and all that, I think he wears his heart on his sleeve. I think he's probably an emotional player, and he would do anything for his teammates, and he would put the 120% in. So
yeah,
you think Patrice Bergeron, yeah. So you can't go wrong, and that's why that second overall pick, unless there's McDavid's name in the mix, you draft with it. You use it, and that will pay off dividends, short-term and long-term.
Yeah. Again, unless you're getting one of the best players in the league, you don't trade the second overall pick. I'm with you there. You don't do it. You didn't. Fiala was never a name you should have even mentioned the second overall pick in. So I'm glad they didn't do that. But yeah, Sam, and just a plug, it's going to be draft season on pucksandpitchforks.com. But first, tomorrow morning, Vinny Parisi spoke to ESPN's John Butchergross, and he's going to write an article to tell you kind of how that interview went, what John Butchergross thinks of the Devils. John Butchergross, he's coming out with the what do they call the ATs? Everything I used to call them when I was a kid, you're not allowed to say anymore. But you know what I mean, like the cutoff shirts.
Mm-hmm.
He was just doing the interview in one of these undershirts. I was like, John Butchergross,
what,
you're
the
a flex,
egg beaters?
Man. Yeah. Yeah, sure. Whatever you call him. But yeah, he was flexing on Vinny Parisi's podcast. But I'm so happy for Vinny. If you haven't seen the interview, at Vinny Parisi on Twitter, go check it out. He shared the interview. The interview looks great. pucksandpitchforks.com. He's going to have, a couple of insights he had on the Devils, especially Jack Hughes. He mentioned that Jack Hughes is something like Patrick Kane, and I don't hate that comparison, Sam. But here's the thing, is that we're going to have the 5 second and third round picks. Those are going to be two different articles, 5 second round picks and 5 third round picks that I really like. We're going to have – I think I'm going to do an article based on what Shayna Goldman said. So we should look for trade down options. So I'm going to see which players have players that would be willing to talk about in a trade down option. So, there's a lot we can do, Sam. There's all we're going to do at pucksandpitchforks.com up until the draft next week. But, that's what we got.
Yeah, also, just a reminder, July 7th, 6 to 10 p.m., Pasta Grill by Enzo's in Hackettstown in the Mansfield section off of Route 57. We're going to have a live draft party, live broadcast, all live. Come meet the crew, Hockey on Tap. Let's Go Devils podcast. And that's it for now. Dropping the podcast at midnight.
I also invited myself on that podcast, so you're going to have to figure that out, Sam.
Oh, you did? Crap.
You'll figure it out.
No, we just canceled that date. We're not having a podcast. We're just sitting at home.
No draft stuff.
Yeah. We're just gonna. I don't know. Want to thank all the people popping on today. Social media was heavy with listeners and watchers. Also, want to thank Shayna Goldman of The Athletic for coming on. Now that she's officially a friend of the podcast. Also, Vinny Parisi, let me tell you something. Maybe this is a story when we get Vinny on one day. How he got the interview with John Butchergross. I thought it was really cool when he told me how he was able to score that interview. It was really cool. I don't know if you know the story, but I'll tell you afterwards.
Maybe we'll have him on the draft special on Wednesday, and we'll ask him then.
Yeah. Hear from the horse's mouth. But anyway, thank you, everybody. Enjoy your commute. Till next time, let's go Devils.